Okay, let's finish this lecture on perception. We left off, we were talking about figure ground perception and how depending what is the background and what is the foreground actually changes what the picture actually is. This is probably the most common picture that you'll see when you're talking about figure ground perception. If the black is the background, it's a vase. If the black is the foreground and the white is the background, oh, reverse that. It always gets confusing. If the black is the background, it's a vase. If the white is the background, it's two faces. So that's what figure ground perception means. This is just a freaky picture. If you look at that elephant, how many feet does it actually have? It's just drawn really weird, and I thought that was pretty interesting. That's why I put it in there. This picture here, you look at it, it's a guy's face with glasses on. But if you tilt your head to the side slightly and you're feeling a little guilty, maybe it says liar. So depending on how you see it determines what you actually see. This picture here can be viewed in one of two ways. It's either an old woman or it's a young lady. If it's a young lady, she's smaller and looking away, and the old woman's mouth is actually a necklace. So just kind of a different figure ground perception type thing. This one is definitely figure ground perception. If the white is the foreground and the black is the background, it's a woman's face. But it's the opposite. Actually, it is a guy, looks like he's playing a saxophone or something like that, if the black is the foreground and the white is the background. Excuse me. These are just a couple of odd pictures depending on your perception of it. When you first glance at that picture, I see kind of an old general looking guy. But if you look in the details, you see, an old man, a woman carrying a big bale of wheat on her shoulder, and a dog. But just kind of a wild picture. Another wild picture looks like two old people, or when you look in detail, it's two guys playing, one playing a guitar, one of them's got some stuff stacked on his head. Again, another picture looks like a conquistador, but when you look at it in detail, there's a lot more in that picture. That's just a freaky picture. This picture here, if you look at that, it looks like a guy being held by a bird. But when you take that picture and completely turn it upside down, looks like a guy out fishing in a canoe. He's got a big fish there. There's an island. So it's the same picture, but our perception of this is different. Okay, another reason to look at perception, proximity. It's when you group things together because they're near each other. For example, that middle term in there, if you group it with the things on top or below it, it's a 13. And if you're grouping it with the A and C on the side, it becomes a B. Similarities, when you group things together because they look alike. If you look at this, if you said, well, this is columns of look like octagons and squares, then you're using similarity. You're grouping things together because they look alike, rather than say they're alternating octagons and squares going across. And continuities. People prefer to see things as a continuous pattern rather than disrupted one. Like this picture, for example, I see that as a wavy line with a straight line drawn through it. But it could have been drawn differently. Maybe it's bits of half circles that are kind of put close to each other. We want to see it as a flow rather than bits and pieces. Same with this one. That one, when I would look at it, I would say, well, that's a white rectangle with a blue rectangle slanted behind it. But in actuality, it's two blue pieces. We want to see it as a constant flow, but it's actually three different pieces. And common fate's another concept when you group things together because they are moving together. You have a tendency to think they're going to the same place or have a common fate. You see two people running around the track together, you assume they're going to stop at the same place. That's common fate. Or maybe if you're going to some place you've been looking for, maybe a concert, or maybe it's a big party or some big event, and you swear that everybody else on the road is going to the same place you are, and they make a couple turns, you're thinking, man, this place is going to be packed, but when you get there, they keep going and you turn in. So it's common fate. Now, how do we perceive movement? In order to do that, you have to see objects change in position relative to other objects. So when you look at watching somebody do a spacewalk out there, on the on TV on the NASA channel or something like that, it looks like they're just floating there. In actuality, they're flying through space at thousands of miles an hour, and but you can't see it relative to anything else. There's no signs out there. There's nothing sitting still, so you really don't see that movement. There's a couple ways to get movement, or to show movement. One of them is through stroboscopic motion, the illusion of movement produced by showing a rapid progression of images that are not moving at all. If you made a flip book back when you were in grade school or maybe junior high, where you draw little pictures, each of them just slightly different. You make a little man dance or whatever you happen to do. You draw the picture over and over again with slight progressions. It looks like a seamless flow. Movies, or older movies, not the digital movies that we have today, were all done like this. They produced that continuity by just taking small pictures and moving them in a little bit of progression, and move that fast enough it looks like a seamless flow. Depth perception. How do we see depth perception? It's the distance away from things. You perceive it in one of two ways. This is using a monocular cue called perception. You look back, it's a vanishing point to the right. These are the things you learn in your art classes. That guy in the middle, or the third man from the left, he looks to be much larger than the other one, but in actuality they are exactly the same height, but since he looks like he's further back, he must be massive. These two lines are equal distance, but if we draw them differently like that, the one in the back looks much longer than the one on the left. The one on the right looks longer. Kind of wild. Alright. This has to deal with size constancy, which we'll talk about here in a second, but the guy that's standing in the background, we know he's going to be the same height as this lady. The guy on the right is actually the same size as the one on the left, but since he's up next to her, he has to be, the perception is totally thrown off here. It has to do with size constancy. I'm not sure why this slide sits in this one, but we'll get there in just a second. Alright, you have monocular cues. These need only one eye to see these, so any of your pirate friends can pick up on these things. It makes a 3-dimension on a 2-dimensional surface. They include perspective, which is that whole vanishing point type thing. Clearness, because things that are clearer appear to be closer to us. Overlapping. When things overlap other things, obviously they must be closer. And when you can put shadow in there, you can see depth with shadows. And texture gradient. When you can see the texture of something, it must be closer than something you can't see the texture of. And then there's a concept called motion parallax. It's things closer to you move at faster speeds than things that are farther away. What this means is, like if you've ever driven to, say, Colorado, you're driving out there, you see the mountains, and they do not move. They're on the horizon for hours before you ever actually get there. They just stay there in one spot, and everything else flies by just as you're driving normally. You know, the sun stays up in the sky. It's really, really far away, but the things that are close to you zip by like they're nothing. That's called the motion parallax. I just kind of like that picture. The ones that are horizontal lines that go across are actually all parallel. It looks like they might be slanted, kind of like a Donkey Kong game, but in actuality those things are parallel, but the other things pull our eyes to make it look like things are actually tilted. This picture, you've seen those done in some of the art classes. It looks like that middle ball is just floating on top of the other ones. Which of those circles is turning faster? Well, when you focus on one, the other one appears to turn. In actuality, neither one of them are turning. This uses a monocular clue of shadowing. Depending on where the light source is coming from, either the right or the left one actually still has the seed in the avocado. If the light is above, then the seed appears on the right side. If the light is below, the seat appears to be on the left side because the shadow would be different. You may have seen this one before too. You count the number of black dots. In actuality, there are no black dots, but our eyes are tricked because of the way this thing is drawn. Alright, binocular cues. These involve two eyes. When you look at something with both eyes, you see them at a slightly different angle, and that little difference in the retinas, that it's made with the retinas, if you pulled your finger out in front of you, it makes a triangle with your two retinas. As it gets closer, the angle in between there changes. That's retinal disparity. They move towards each other, the closer the object appears. And both of these cues are used in objects that are really close. So my finger's right in front of me. I can see the texture, I can see all this different stuff. They're utilized in these magic eye pictures where you stare at things like this. They're computer generated, and after a while you can see a picture. I think this one is supposed to be a couple dolphins jumping through a hoop. Alright, perceptual constancies. What this means is these are things that stay constant even though they're not. The size, we know that through experience that the things are the same size no matter how far away they are. If I see a guy standing on the track and he's half a mile away from me, he's really tiny in my visual input, but I know when he gets to me, he will be my size. This is learned. Let me back up there just a second. We learned this because they brought this pygmy from the jungle, and as they walked across the savannas out in the open, he saw water buffalo, which he'd never seen before at a distance. He wanted to go over and pick him up and put him in his little pouch. Of course, when he got close to the water buffalo, he realized they were huge, but he'd never seen it at a great distance because he's been in the jungle his whole life, and he'd never seen water buffalo. So we know this is a learned thing. With color constancies, we know in the dark, when you're sitting there taking notes with somebody, watching things on the screen, that your colors all appear different, but we know as soon as we turn the light on, they will go back to normal. And then brightness constancy. Tendency to perceive objects as being equally bright even though the intensity of light around them changes. If you look at those circles, or the rings actually, to the left and to the right, they are the same on both things, but the intensity of light around them changes, and therefore the one on the right looks darker than the one on the left. Shape constancies, you know that things hold their shape even though you view them from different perspective. If you're looking straight on a door, it's a rectangle, but as you go to the right, it turns into a trapezoid. But you don't start freaking out. You know as soon as you walk back over there, it's going to look like a rectangle again. And there's a couple illusions that deal with size constancy as well. The Mule-Lear deals with size, and the Ponzo illusion deals with perspective. This is the Ponzo illusion. It's two lines, but the one on top appears to be much longer than the one on the bottom, because of the way this perspective is drawn. And this is the Mule-Lear illusion. The lines that are horizontal or that vertical on the left and right are the same length, but the one on the left closes your perspective, and the one on the right opens your visual field. So one on the left is pinching your visual field, the one on the right is expanding your visual field. So it appears to be longer on the right than on the left. And that's it. Hopefully you've understood what these things are. You can go back and repeat these, and that's it. If you have any questions, please stop by my room. Thank you.